Some people say if it's not a problem, don't mess with it, and some people say absolutely change it because it's a fire hazard. So the question is exposed knob and tube wiring a problem? You guys want to weigh in on this?
Exposed as in it's just like out on the surface and you don't have any drywall or anything else over it?
Exactly. So this would either be in your basement or in your attic. You know, you could see it, presumably, and see if it's degrading or there's problems with it.
Well, I'd say, I mean, attic is certainly the place you'd be more concerned with than the basement, just because you're talking about a surface that's facing up that stuff could be put on top of it, as opposed to just being above your head, suspended between the joists.
So that's not what I thought you were going to say.
Really?
I thought you were going to say it in the attic because the heat would be damaging to the wire's insulation, which I think is totally true.
Well, what I meant by the attic, though, is that people are more tempted to either put stuff on top of it, especially if they're thinking about insulating.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So no, I think attic's definitely a bigger concern. But in fact, I don't have the number. You probably do, Patrick, because you're more of the code nerd than I am. But basically, the National Electric Code specifies that if there is knob and tube wiring and you are placing any loose fill, blown in, or spray applied insulation, that it needs to be removed. It can't be encased in that for fire hazard reasons.
Yeah, because how it works is the individual conductors in knob and tube wiring can give off heat. And if you bury them in insulation, that quality is reduced, and the potential for fire goes much higher.
Yeah. So actually, why don't we back up then, because we didn't really explain. I mean, I'm sure most people familiar with old houses know what knob and tube is, but
go ahead.
But basically, the way it works is they would install bare copper wires,
not bare, insulated, but individual conductors.
Yeah. And they would be suspended from your framing members through ceramic insulators, similar to the type of insulators that you see on
utility poles, but smaller. They're like the ones I've seen are like ordinarily an inch in diameter and probably 2 inches tall.
Yeah, and the reason why it's called knob and tube is because when it was suspended on the surface, it would be wrapped around a little knob or clamped between two portions of a little knob, and then when it goes through a framing member, it goes through a ceramic pipe or tube. So. And
that insulates the conductor and affords some protection to the wire when they're running it, right?
Yep.
And it's common early 20th century, I think probably into the 1930s or 40s.
Yeah.
We started seeing BX, which was the next type of electrical cabling in common use around the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. So it's in my house mostly.
Do you have BX in your house?
Yeah, a lot of it. And then at some point, I don't know, I'm guessing it was the previous homeowner added a lot of non-metallic.
Yep.
And, that's spliced in junction boxes and running out to all other kinds of places.
So BX cable is more like modern non-metallic sheath cable in the fact that there are 2 or 3 conductors inside. Instead of a plastic, it has a metal jacket. And in many cases, the oldest stuff relied on the outer jacket as the ground, and that's a very unreliable ground. So it's good that that's gone away. Let's just say that.
Yeah, as the spiral metal casing around the BX cables would start to rust, it basically just like the problems people typically have in cars when you get corrosion on the surfaces, you start losing your connection, and then you don't have a safe ground.
And you have no ground at all with knob and tube.
None.
None at all. And so,
just the two.
Yeah, so basically what it comes down to is that, like you were saying when you started, some people say, yeah, it's okay if it's out of harm's way and it isn't disturbed and the insulation seems intact. But certainly if you have access to the wires in an attic or a basement and you're doing any kind of work around that area, it just seems like it's a good idea, even if it isn't code specified, code required to just eliminate it. I mean, I'm having a new panel coming into my house, new service panel, and the electrician, he's like, well, we'll at least eliminate all the BX cables from the box itself. And I said, at that point, we might as well just do it through the whole basement.
Yeah, sure, because it's dangerous, right? It's like house fires are alarmingly common in this country. And the other thing is, someone asked if like, well, can you put this wiring under insulation? And the answer we said is no. Other types of wiring are okay, but electricians and the code requires that you at least mark the locations of any junction boxes. And the easiest way to do that is to get a little flag. We're talking about attic insulation right now. Get a little flag on a little stick of wood and mark the locations of those so that they can find them later if need be. And, because you don't want to be having to pull up all your insulation to find your junction boxes.
Yeah. It's worth noting, though, that not every state necessarily has adopted every part of the electrical code. So I think California will let you put certain types of insulation, non-combustible insulation, in contact with knob and tube. But it has to meet, like, there has to be a whole bunch of other requirements, too. But I don't have those all available in front of me. But
I think the bottom line is if it's easy to remove, you probably should. Because at this point, it's more than 100 years old. And the insulation on wire has come a long way since then. It used to be fabric and rubber-based. And if you've ever done any wiring with old wires, you know how easy it is to damage that insulation, and then you have exposed conductors, and that's how fires start.
Yeah, just try to bend that wire a little bit. That thing will probably crack.
Exactly. The insulation breaks right off.
Yep.
So that's, if you can get rid of it, do it. Otherwise, don't insulate, I would say.